London, 1813. Lady Margaret Vance regarded her reflection in the looking-glass with a critical eye. Her lady's maid had arranged her chestnut curls in the latest fashion, adorned with a simple pearl comb, elegant, but not ostentatious. Her gown of pale blue silk complemented her complexion and emphasized her slender figure without appearing as though she were trying too hard to impress. "Perfect," she murmured, mostly to herself. One must look one's best when one is about to reject a prince. Her lady's maid gasped. "My lady!" Margaret smiled, the expression not quite reaching her eyes. "I jest, of course, Phillips." But they both knew she did not. At 23, Margaret had already turned down for proposals of marriage, earning her the unfortunate sobriquet of the Discerning Spinster among the gossips of the ton. Her parents had all but given up hope of seeing her wed. But this proposal was different. This one came from His Royal Highness, Prince Benedict of Bellington, third son of King George III, youngest brother. Not quite in direct line for the throne, but royal nonetheless. A man whose favor could elevate her family's standing considerably. A man who, by all accounts, had never once met her. "Your father awaits you in the drawing-room, my lady," Philip said, straightening Margaret's skirts. "The prince's emissary arrived not 10 minutes ago." "An emissary," Margaret repeated, raising one eyebrow. "How romantic." The Vance family drawing-room was a study in understated elegance, much like the Earl of Radmore himself. The Earl, a man of 60 whose health had begun to fail him in recent months, sat rigidly in his favorite chair, his face betraying nothing of his thoughts as Margaret entered. "Ah, Margaret," he said, his voice soft but firm. "May I present Lord Camden, emissary to His Royal Highness, Prince Benedict of Bellington." The gentleman bowed deeply. He was perhaps 40, with a carefully maintained appearance and the benign expression of one who had mastered the art of diplomatic neutrality. "Lady Margaret," he said. "It is an honor." Margaret curtsied. "My lord." "Lord Camden brings news of a most favorable nature," her father continued, gesturing for her to sit. "It seems His Royal Highness has taken an interest in you." "Indeed," Lord Camden said, his smile practiced. "The prince has observed you from afar at several society functions and finds your beauty and comportment most agreeable. He believes you would make an excellent princess." Margaret's composure nearly faltered. "How flattering! And yet, I cannot recall ever having been introduced to His Royal Highness." A brief flicker of discomfort crossed Lord Camden's face. "The prince is a man of exceptional discernment. He has made inquiries about your character and family. All reports have been most favorable." "I see," she said carefully. "And His Royal Highness wishes to court me." Lord Camden cleared his throat. "His Royal Highness proposes a marriage of convenience, my lady. An arrangement beneficial to both parties. Your family would enjoy royal patronage and connection, while the prince would gain a suitable bride of proper breeding and accomplishment." The Earl's eyes shone with naked ambition. "Think of it, Margaret. Our family allied with royalty. A marriage of convenience," Margaret repeated, her voice cooling several degrees. "And what of love, my Lord Camden? Does His Royal Highness not believe in such sentiments?" Lord Camden's smile strained at the edges. "The prince is practical by nature, my lady. In his position, sentiment must often give way to duty. But he assures me that he will treat you with every courtesy and respect." "How generous," she replied. "And when might I expect to actually meet my prospective husband?" "The prince extends an invitation for you and your family to visit his country estate next week. A small gathering of intimate acquaintances where you might become better acquainted before a formal announcement." Margaret rose from her seat, her mind racing. "Please convey to His Royal Highness that we are honored by his proposal. I look forward to making his acquaintance at his estate, where we might discuss the matter further." Lord Camden's relief was palpable. He bowed. "I shall relay your message, my lady." When the emissary had departed, the Earl turned to his daughter with unconcealed excitement. "This is beyond our wildest hopes, Margaret. A prince! Margaret paced the room, her thoughts turbulent. A prince who wishes to marry a woman he has never met. A prince who speaks of convenience rather than affection. What does affection matter when weighed against position and security? Her father demanded. Your mother and I began as strangers in an arranged match, and we have been content these 30 years. Content, Margaret echoed. Is that truly all you've shared with mother? Contentment. The Earl's expression softened. We grew to care for one another deeply, in time. As you and the prince might do. Margaret shook her head. I have no desire to begin my marriage hoping that love might eventually grace it. If the prince wishes for my hand, he must first win my heart. Margaret, I shall go to his estate, she declared. I shall meet this prince who believes he can purchase a bride as one might a horse at auction. And then, father, we shall see if his royal highness can offer more than convenience. The Earl sighed, recognizing the stubborn set of his daughter's jaw. What precisely do you intend? Margaret smiled, a plan already forming in her mind. I intend to teach a prince the value of love. Bellington Hall rose majestically from the verdant Derbyshire countryside, its elegant Georgian architecture a testament to the refined taste of its royal owner. As the Vance family carriage approached the sweeping drive, Margaret found her determination momentarily overtaken by awe. It's magnificent, her mother whispered, eyes wide. Indeed, the Earl agreed. Benedict's grandfather had it built as a wedding gift to his wife. They say he spared no expense. A romantic gesture, Margaret remarked. Perhaps there is hope for the grandson after all. The welcoming party awaiting them on the steps was small but distinguished. Lord Camden stood at attention, while beside him waited a tall, imposing figure Margaret immediately recognized as the Dowager Duchess of Bellington, the prince's grandmother and a formidable presence in society. But of the prince himself, there was no sign. Welcome to Bellington Hall, the Duchess said as they alighted from the carriage. Her voice was like polished steel, elegant but unyielding. His Royal Highness sends his apologies. Urgent business called him to London this morning, but he shall return by tomorrow's dinner. Margaret exchanged a glance with her father. How unfortunate, she said, keeping her tone neutral. I was so looking forward to making his acquaintance. As he was yours, I assure you, the Duchess replied, though her expression suggested skepticism. In the meantime, you shall be shown to your rooms. We dine at 7. As a footman led them through the grand entrance hall, Margaret took in the splendor around her. Priceless artwork adorned the walls, crystal chandeliers cast rainbows across marble floors, and fresh flowers perfumed the air. It was a palace in miniature, designed to impress and overwhelm. What do you think? Her father murmured, falling into step beside her. I think, she replied softly, that our prince values appearances a great deal. Let us hope there is substance beneath the shine. That evening, dinner was a small affair, with only the Vances, the Duchess, Lord Camden, and 2 other guests, Lady Sophia Pembroke, a distant cousin of the prince, and Sir James Worthington, an old friend of the royal family. The conversation flowed easily enough, though Margaret noted how carefully the others avoided any direct discussion of the prince's proposal. Tell me, Lady Margaret, the Duchess said over the second course, her shrewd eyes evaluating, what accomplishments do you possess? My grandson values a well-educated woman. Margaret met her gaze steadily. I speak French and Italian fluently, Your Grace. I play the pianoforte with tolerable skill, though my true passion is literature. I am particularly fond of philosophy. Philosophy. The Duchess's eyebrows rose. An unusual interest for a young lady. Perhaps. But I find great value in questioning the nature of things, including marriage. For instance, the philosophers disagree on whether a union founded on practical considerations can ever achieve the same depth as one rooted in genuine affection. A weighted silence fell over the table. An interesting observation, Lady Sophia said finally, a hint of amusement in her voice. And what conclusion have you reached, Lady Margaret? Margaret smiled. I believe that convenience without love is like a house without a foundation. It may stand for a time, but eventually, it will crumble. The The Duchess's lips thinned. Young women often mistake romantic notions for wisdom, my dear. In my experience, mutual respect and compatible temperaments make for far more lasting marriages than fleeting passion. Is it not possible to have both, Your Grace? Margaret countered. Respect and passion need not be mutually exclusive. Sir James chuckled. You would do well to prepare yourself, Benedict, he said, addressing the empty chair at the head of the table. Your intended has strong opinions. Margaret frowned. I beg your pardon, Sir James. But before he could respond, a commotion in the hall drew their attention. The door swung open, and a footman announced, His Royal Highness, Prince Benedict of Bellington. All rose as a man entered the dining room, but not the man Margaret had expected. This was not the tall, imposing figure she had imagined, but a gentleman of average height with unruly auburn hair and spectacles perched upon a straight nose. His clothing, while finely made, lacked the ostentatious embellishments favored by most royal personages. He looked, Margaret thought with surprise, rather ordinary. Forgive my tardiness, he said, his voice unexpectedly warm. The roads from London were abysmal. As he took his seat, his eyes met Margaret's across the table. They were a startling shade of green, intelligent and appraising. Lady Margaret, I presume, he said. I am pleased to finally make your acquaintance. Margaret curtsied. Your Royal Highness. I understand you have been discussing philosophy, he continued, signaling for the servants to bring his dinner. Pray, do not let my arrival interrupt such stimulating conversation. The Duchess cleared her throat. Lady Margaret was expounding on her theories of marriage, Benedict. She believes convenience to be an insufficient foundation. To Margaret's surprise, the prince smiled. An interesting position. And what would Lady Margaret consider a sufficient foundation? All eyes turned to her. Margaret lifted her chin. Love, Your Highness. Mutual understanding. A meeting of minds and hearts. Admirable sentiments, the prince said, his expression unreadable. Though perhaps somewhat idealistic in a world where marriages are so often arranged for advantage. Is idealism a fault, Your Highness? Not at all. Merely a luxury that some cannot afford. Margaret felt a flicker of disappointment. Including princes. Especially princes, he replied, his gaze direct. We are bound by duty before all else. The conversation shifted to safer topics after that, but Margaret found herself watching the prince with growing curiosity. He spoke intelligently on a range of subjects, from politics to literature, and displayed a dry wit that occasionally broke through his reserved demeanor. Several times, she caught him observing her when he thought she wasn't looking. After dinner, the gentlemen remained for port while the ladies withdrew to the drawing room. As Margaret followed the Duchess from the dining room, she felt a light touch on her arm. The prince had risen from his seat. Lady Margaret, he said quietly, might I request the pleasure of showing you the library tomorrow morning? I understand you have an interest in literature. Margaret felt the weight of the Duchess's disapproving gaze. I should be delighted, Your Highness. As she retired to her room that night, Margaret found herself conflicted. The prince was not what she had expected, neither as arrogant nor as cold as his proposal had suggested. Yet he remained committed to a marriage without love, a concept she could not accept. What game are you playing, Your Highness? She murmured as she gazed out her window at the moonlit gardens below. And what will it take for you to abandon convenience for something far more precious? The Bellington Library was a bibliophile's paradise, with towering shelves that reached to the ceiling and comfortable reading nooks nestled between them. Morning sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating the dust motes that danced in the air. Margaret arrived precisely at the appointed time to find the prince already waiting, engaged in conversation with a middle-aged gentleman in formal attire. Ah, Lady Margaret, Prince Benedict said, turning at her entrance. Allow me to present Mr. Harris, my private secretary. The secretary bowed deeply. My lady. Mr. Harris was just leaving, the prince continued, with a meaningful glance at his employee. We have concluded our business for the morning. When they were alone, Benedict gestured around the vast room. "What do you think of my sanctuary, Lady Margaret?" She moved to the nearest shelf, trailing her fingers reverently along the spines of leather-bound volumes. "It's magnificent. I've never seen so many books in a private collection." "It is my greatest indulgence," he admitted, following her. "My grandmother considers it a rather eccentric passion. She believes I should spend more time at court and less time reading." Margaret selected a volume at random, a collection of Shakespeare's sonnets. "And what do you believe, Your Highness?" He smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his scholarly features. "I believe that a life without literature would be unbearably dull. But please, when we are in private, I would prefer you call me Benedict." "That would be most improper," she replied, though she was not displeased by the suggestion. "As would much of what I've observed about you, Lady Margaret. Your outspoken nature. Your philosophical inquiries. Your reluctance to accept a proposal that most young ladies would embrace without hesitation." Margaret raised an eyebrow. "You seem well informed about my character, sir." "I make it a point to be thorough in my research," he said, moving to a desk where several books lay open. "For instance, I know that you declined the hand of the Duke of Westmoreland last season, despite his considerable wealth and title. And before him, Lord Pembroke, Sir William Hastings, and Mr. Frederick Devereux. You've compiled quite a list," she noted, unsure whether to be flattered or affronted. "May I ask why?" Benedict adjusted his spectacles. "I wish to understand what manner of woman would reject such advantageous matches." It suggested either unrealistic expectations or unusual depth of character. "And which do you believe me to possess?" He studied her face. "I have yet to determine. Hence, this invitation to Bellington Hall." Margaret set down the book of sonnets. "Tell me, Your Highness, Benedict," he corrected. She hesitated, then conceded. "Benedict, then. Why do you seek a marriage of convenience? Surely as a prince, you might marry where you choose." A shadow passed over his features. "My position affords me many privileges, but unfettered choice in matrimony is not among them. My family expects a match that will strengthen our alliances. And yet, you have not chosen a foreign princess or a daughter of the highest nobility. You have chosen me, the daughter of a minor earl with no particular connections. Why?" Benedict moved to the window, his profile outlined against the sunlight. "Because, Lady Margaret, while I cannot marry solely for love, I refuse to marry without the possibility of it." Her heart quickened. "I don't understand." He turned back to her, his expression earnest. "Your reputation for intelligence and independence intrigued me. When I observed you at Lady Whitmore's ball last season, though we were not introduced, I watched as you engaged Lord Kensington in a debate on women's education that left him quite flustered. You were passionate, articulate, and utterly unconcerned with how your opinions might affect your standing." Margaret remembered the incident well. She had been roundly criticized by her mother afterward for being too forward. "You impress me," he continued. "And while I must make a practical match, I hope to find a woman of substance, someone I might come to care for, in time." She shook her head. "So you propose marriage to a woman you admire from afar, without even the courtesy of an introduction?" "A strategic error," he admitted with a rueful smile. "Lord Camden can be overzealous in his duties. I had intended a proper courtship, but he accelerated matters in his enthusiasm." "And now?" Benedict approached her, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his green eyes. "Now, Lady Margaret, I propose something different. 1 week. Give me 1 week to show you that a marriage begun in practicality need not end there. Allow me to court you properly, as I should have from the beginning." Margaret felt herself wavering. There was something disarmingly sincere about this scholarly prince with his spectacles and unruly hair. "And if, at the end of the week, I remain unconvinced, then you may return to London with my profound regrets and no damage to your reputation. We shall say that we found ourselves incompatible." She considered his offer. 1 week to test his character, to determine if this unusual prince might be worthy of her heart. Very well. 1 week. Benedict smiled, a bright, boyish expression that made him appear younger than his 30 years. Excellent. Then let us begin with honesty. I know you questioned my intentions, but what are yours, Lady Margaret? What do you seek in a husband that your previous suitors could not provide? The directness of the question startled her. I seek a partnership of equals, she said after a moment. Not a man who views me as an ornament or a possession, but as a companion. Someone who values my mind as well as my appearance. And love, he asked softly. You spoke so passionately of it at dinner. Margaret met his gaze steadily. Love, I believe, grows from respect and understanding. It cannot be forced, nor can it be denied when it truly exists. Then we are not so different in our desires, Benedict said. Only in our approaches. A knock at the door interrupted them. Lord Camden entered, bowing apologetically. Your Royal Highness, forgive the intrusion. The delegation from Austria has arrived early. They await you in the blue salon. Benedict sighed. Duty calls, it seems. He turned to Margaret with regret in his eyes. Would you ride with me tomorrow morning? The grounds are quite beautiful at dawn. I should like that, she replied, surprised by her own eagerness. As she watched him depart, Margaret felt a curious sense of anticipation. The prince was a puzzle, practical yet passionate, dutiful yet independent. Whether he could be taught to value love above convenience remained to be seen, but for the first time, she found herself hoping it might be possible. The week that followed was unlike any Margaret had experienced. True to his word, Benedict courted her with attentive care, revealing a man far more complex than she had initially judged him to be. Their morning rides became a cherished ritual. Benedict proved to be an excellent horseman, though he laughed when she commented on it. A royal prince is expected to excel at riding, hunting, dancing, and witty conversation, he told her as they cantered along a wooded path. I managed the first tolerably well. The others remain works in progress. You underestimate yourself, Margaret replied. Your conversation is most engaging. You are too kind. My grandmother would tell you I spend too much time discussing books and politics, and not enough time practicing the art of charming small talk. I find charming small talk to be neither charming nor small. It is tedious and empty. Benedict laughed, the sound echoing through the trees. Another reason why you intrigue me, Lady Margaret. You say what you think, regardless of convention. Does that not concern you? She asked. A princess should be diplomatic, should she not? A true princess should be authentic, he countered. The world has enough sycophants and flatterers. I would prefer a wife who speaks truth, even when it is uncomfortable. In the afternoons, they often walked in the gardens, discussing everything from literature to philosophy to the responsibilities of the aristocracy toward the less fortunate. Benedict revealed that he had established several charitable schools for the children of the tenants on his estates, a project he spoke of with genuine passion. Education is the greatest gift we can offer, he explained as they paused beside a fountain. It opens doors that would otherwise remain forever closed. Even for girls? Margaret challenged. Especially for girls, he replied without hesitation. Half the population's intellect wasted because society deems their minds unworthy of cultivation. It is not merely unjust, it is foolish. Each evening brought a different entertainment. A small musical recital in the drawing room, where Benedict surprised her by playing the violin with considerable skill. A friendly archery competition on the lawn, which Margaret won to the dismay of Sir James and the barely concealed amusement of the Duchess. A treasure hunt through the manor, with clues composed by Benedict himself in the form of poetic riddles. Through it all, Margaret found herself increasingly drawn to the prince. His intelligence matched her own, his principles seemed genuine, and beneath his reserved exterior lay a dry wit that frequently made her laugh. More than once, she caught herself wondering what it might be like to be his wife in truth, not merely in name. Yet whenever the conversation turned to their potential marriage, Benedict still spoke of practicality, of mutual benefit, of compatibility. of everything but love. On the 6th day of their courtship, a summer storm confined the party to the house. Margaret found herself alone in the music room, playing a melancholy piece on the pianoforte when Benedict entered. "That was beautiful," he said when she finished. "Beethoven?" "Mozart," she corrected. "Though I'm surprised you recognized it. Most gentlemen profess an interest in music merely to appear cultured. I assure you, my interest is genuine, if amateur." He hesitated, then asked, "May I join you?" At her nod, he retrieved his violin from its case and tuned it quickly. "Do you know Bach's concerto in D minor?" They played together, their instruments complementing each other in perfect harmony. Margaret found herself watching Benedict's face as he played, his eyes closed in concentration, his expression transported by the music. This, she realized, was the man beneath the royal title and scholarly demeanor, passionate, sensitive, and utterly present in the moment. When the piece ended, neither spoke immediately. The silence between them hummed with unspoken emotions. "We play well together," Benedict said at last, his voice soft. "Yes," Margaret agreed, her heart racing inexplicably. "We do." He set his violin aside and moved to sit beside her on the pianoforte bench. "Tomorrow is our last day." "Yes," she said again, unable to form more eloquent words with him so close. "Have I convinced you?" he asked, searching her face. "That a marriage of convenience might hold promise." Margaret looked down at the ivory keys beneath her fingers. "You have shown me that you are a man of principle and intelligence. That we share many interests and values. That we would, in all likelihood, be compatible partners." "But," he prompted gently. She raised her eyes to his. "But you still speak of marriage as a practical arrangement. You offer compatibility, respect, even friendship. Yet you withhold the one thing I cannot compromise on." Benedict's expression grew troubled. "Margaret, you asked for honesty," she continued. "So I will give it to you. In this week, I have come to care for you far more than I expected. Perhaps more than is wise. But I cannot accept a half measure in marriage. I want a husband who loves me, not merely esteems me." She stood abruptly. "Forgive me. I should not have spoken so plainly." Before he could respond, she fled the room, her composure crumbling with each step. She had revealed too much, exposed her heart too completely. Worse, she now knew with devastating clarity that she was falling in love with a man who viewed love as secondary to practicality. That evening, Margaret pleaded a headache and remained in her room, unable to face Benedict across the dinner table. As she prepared for bed, a soft knock came at her door. Her maid answered it, returning with a small package and a note. The package contained a book, a first edition of Mary Wollstonecraft's A Vindication of the Rights of Woman. Margaret opened it with trembling hands to find an inscription on the title page, "To a woman who vindicates her own rights with eloquence and courage. B." The accompanying note was brief: "Tomorrow at dawn, the Rose Garden. There is something I must show you before you decide." Margaret slept little that night, her dreams filled with haunting violin music and unanswerable questions. The Rose Garden was shrouded in mist as Margaret made her way along the gravel paths at first light. The air was cool and sweet with the scent of flowers, and dew sparkled on every petal and leaf. She found Benedict waiting beside a marble bench, his tall figure silhouetted against the pale morning sky. "You came," he said, relief evident in his voice. "Your gift was most persuasive," she replied. "Wollstonecraft is a personal hero of mine." "I know." He smiled. "I told you I am thorough in my research." Margaret shivered slightly in the cool air. "You said you had something to show me." Benedict nodded, suddenly serious. "This way." He led her deeper into the garden, past beds of roses in every hue, until they reached a secluded corner where a small structure stood partially hidden by climbing vines. It was a temple in the classical style, its white columns gleaming in the strengthening light. "My grandfather built this for my grandmother," Benedict explained as they approached. "A testament to their love." Inside, the walls were adorned with paintings, portraits of the same couple at different stages of life, from their youth to old age. "My grandparents' marriage was arranged," Benedict said quietly. "A diplomatic union between royal houses. By all accounts, they barely knew each other on their wedding day." "And yet?" Margaret prompted. "And yet, they found love. Not immediately, perhaps, but deeply and lastingly." He gestured to the portraits. "Each of these was commissioned on their anniversary, year after year. You can see how they changed. How they grew together." Margaret studied the paintings. It was true, in the earliest, the couple stood formally apart, their expressions polite but distant. In each subsequent portrait, they drew closer, their poses more natural, their smiles more genuine. In the final painting, elderly now, they sat hand in hand, their faces lined with age but their eyes bright with undimmed affection. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "This is my heritage," Benedict said. "Not just the title or the estate, but this capacity for love that grows over time." He took her hands in his. "Margaret, when I proposed a marriage of convenience, it was not because I devalue love. It was because I did not wish to presume upon feelings that must be earned." Her heart quickened. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I began this courtship hoping to find a woman I could respect and admire. Someone with whom love might eventually be possible." His voice softened. "Instead, I found myself falling in love with you almost from the moment you challenged me in my own library." Margaret felt tears spring to her eyes. "You love me?" "Completely," he confessed. "Your intelligence, your courage, your unwillingness to settle for less than you deserve. Even your stubborn insistence on love above practicality." He dropped to one knee before her, still holding her hands. "I came to Bellington believing I could not afford the luxury of marrying for love. You have shown me that I cannot afford not to. Lady Margaret Vance, will you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife, not for convenience, but for love?" Margaret's joy was so overwhelming that for a moment she could not speak. Then, pulling him to his feet, she answered in the only way that felt adequate to the moment. She kissed him. Benedict responded with such tenderness that all her doubts melted away. When they finally parted, both breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. "I take it that's a yes," he murmured. Margaret laughed, her heart lighter than it had ever been. "Yes. 1,000 times, yes. My practical, philosophy-reading, truth-speaking princess," he said, caressing her cheek. "How fortunate I am that you demanded more than convenience." "And how fortunate I am," she replied, "that you were wise enough to offer it." As the sun rose fully above the garden, bathing them in golden light, Margaret thought of the portraits in the temple, the visual testament of a love that had grown over decades. She and Benedict would have their own story to tell, their own portraits to paint. Not a marriage of convenience that had blossomed into love, but a love that had rejected convenience from the very beginning. And in that moment, as he kissed her again with all the promise of their future contained in that single act, Margaret knew that no convenience in the world could compare to the wild, wonderful inconvenience of true love.